We started in Arlington, Virginia 4 years ago to support all the awesome women business owners we knew and to support their businesses. AWE has now grown to 6 chapters throughout the DC region. We're starting another in LA next month, and we have more launching in Florida, Montana, and around the US later this year and beyond. My co-conspirator, Evelyn Powers, is here, and with her and our awesome board of advisors and more than 200 local members, we passionately believe that women supporting women is the key to success for our businesses and also in our lives. Collaboration, not competition, is the way that we are all going to grow and thrive, and that is just our mantra. Even if you're in the same industry as another woman, there are so many ways to collaborate and share, go after bigger projects, give her a piece of business, she'll give you one, and we all benefit from that. So if you're interested, we've got a postcard on all of your seats, and we would love you to either join a local chapter, or if you're not from this area, consider starting one in your own community and being a leader among the women business owners where you are. So I'm thrilled to see you all here today to take part in this really important conversation. So it's my great pleasure to introduce our panel. Julie Still-Rolin, AKA the Sexual Harassment Guru, is a Pensacola, Florida-based speaker and writer. Her own experience with sexual harassment in the workplace fueled her to research and write and to create enhanced training for women in business. She also focuses on improving organizational culture. Julie quite rightly believes that the changes happening right now in this area are a movement, not just a moment. M. Reese Everson, AKA Babes in the Workplace, after completing law school and operating her own firm in Chicago, Reese served as a legislative staff member to many senior members of Congress. Targeted by sexual harassment, retaliation, and wrongful termination on Capitol Hill, she realized young women often lack the tools to successfully navigate sexual harassment and gender discrimination in the workplace. So she created a manual to provide a support system and resources for women like us. I'm going to let each of these amazing women briefly tell you their stories. Then I'm going to ask them a few questions to offer you the most useful tips and information in the short time we have, and then we'll open it up to questions for the last 5 minutes or so. So Julie, let's start with you. Please share what led you to become the sexual harassment guru.
So I am, like you now, an empowered woman, but I wasn't always so. In my past life, or former life as I like to think of it, I was a victim several times in several different capacities. And I was angry and damaged from that. Over a span of 10 years, I didn't realize the massive damage that had caused, but it was there. And what I did was convert that pain and anger into passion, because I did what I do best and started researching and writing about sexual harassment, and I had to understand it. And what I did was learn some pretty profound things that may seem simple, but they were very important in my life at that time. And one of those was that personality is a major factor when it comes to the way that we respond to bullying. So I am not, I don't like to be disagreeable. Now my kids may disagree with me on that, but that's a different point. But at work, I didn't feel like I should have to defend myself, and that didn't make me weak, it just made me who I am. Another point that I learned was that I was surprised, not responsible for other people's actions. So what someone else did to me was not because of how I acted or how I dressed or what I said or what I did. It was on them. And finally, and most importantly, I learned that I had not been properly trained to handle specific situations. The training that I had in the past was a joke, if it existed at all. And so that is what fueled me to become the sexual harassment guru. And in that capacity, I am a teacher and a trainer and, generally an educator on this issue, because I feel like that's where we need to go. That's where
Awesome. Thank you, Julie. Reese, tell us about Babes in the Workplace.
All right. Well, the story starts like this. In 2012, I moved to Washington, D.C. Now, I have a question. I want to know about you, since we're in an intimate setting. How many of you are recent college graduates? All right, how many of you are young professionals between the age of 20 and 30? All right, and how many of you are just fabulously in somewhere between 30 and 40? and fabulous and whatever else beyond there. Okay, so we have a good mixture here. So I graduated from law school at 22 years old. I started a firm in Chicago practicing law, but I said to myself, I never really wanted to practice law. I wanted to be on Capitol Hill. I thought that that was the place where you go to make a change in this world, and giving back and speaking up for the people back home in Detroit who didn't know how to speak for themselves and who wanted to have a voice but may not know how, and to advocate for all the things that people back in Detroit needed. And so I came to Capitol Hill working to learn everything that I could on how to become the next best congresswoman in the US. And while working for a member of Congress, I was in his office one day and he basically said to me, so if you staff me on this next outing, are you going to be good? And I said, yeah, of course I'm going to be good. And taking notes and working on his speech. No. If you come, are you going to be good? I said, yeah, I'll be good. Well, if you're going to be good, then what's the point of you coming? And I said, wait, huh? And I'm sitting there so stupefied, it didn't even dawn on me what the conversation was actually about. He said, are you going to flirt with me? What's going on here? And I went, ew. And I didn't say that out loud, but what I did say was, don't flatter yourself. This man was 70 years old. I'm not interested in doing anything with you at this point. Or at any point, frankly. And so what that did for me was it put me into panic mode. And so as a human being, we are neurologically trained to have one of three responses, and you've been this way since you were in an embryo in your mother. You have fight, flight, or freeze. And so fight is you just have all this adrenaline, and even if a car falls on top of someone and you see it, you can go and lift that car up, and when the paramedics come, they say, what happened? I don't know, I just lifted the car up. How did you do it? Fight. You summoned all the strength you had. Or flight. I gotta get the hell out of here. It's a bear, and I don't know how, but I'm gonna outrun this thing. Or freeze. I don't know what to do. I'm petrified. I'm gonna stand here, and if there's a bear, more than likely he's gonna take a paw across me and I'm out of here. But I couldn't move. Nothing within me would allow me to move. And so with my experience, I was standing there and everything in me said, you gotta get the heck out of here, run. And so I ran. I tried to move to another office. Someone said, hey, she said she was sexually harassed. And so they said, oh, she told someone that she was sexually harassed? We gotta get rid of her. She's a problem. Because in sexual harassment, it's easier to get rid of the person complaining than it is to get rid of the person who's been in Congress for 30 years. So I was retaliated against, blackballed, fired, and I couldn't find a job anywhere in Washington, D.C. And I said to myself, if I'm 21 to 26 years old and I have a law degree and I don't know how to deal with sexual harassment, then what about the 21 and 22 and 23-year-olds who are just getting out of school? What are they supposed to do? How is it that I've been working and I have no idea what I'm supposed to do in this situation? As I began to look into what the law said, I didn't know the difference between quid pro quo harassment or a hostile work environment. I had not even called what I experienced sexual harassment. When he said, will you flirt with me if I let you staff me on this trip, I didn't realize that that's what's by definition quid pro quo, which means if you do what I want you to do, I'll let you advance, I'll let you through this door. And so because I didn't know what the law was, what the rules were, I said, if I don't know, someone's got to tell, who's going to tell the next group of young women coming up behind us? So I did research, and as this young lady did, and wrote a manual called the Babe's Guide. So it breaks down the law from a lawyer's point of view for a 21-year-old, as if I were sitting and talking to you personally, to explain how to deal with this issue. What do you need to do? What do you need to write down? Who do you need to talk to? What steps do you need to take? Because I don't want anyone else to have to go through what I went through.
Thank you, Reese. That's amazing. So we've seen it all lately throughout all of the media with the Time's Up and Me Too movement, and especially just Thursday with Harvey Weinstein being led away in handcuffs. I mean, that would have been unthinkable even 1 year ago. It's just incredible. So, Julie, what does this movement mean, and what does this change? What kind of change is being created since Me Too started?
I love that you're calling it a movement, because it is that, and it is not a moment. Now, in my field, I've had a lot of resistance. Guys don't want this to go away, and I'm not generalizing all of them, but there are some that are like, no, just, you've had your minute and sit down. And this Me Too movement and Time's Up and Demand Respect shows that it's not going away. And this is also a movement that's accessible to everyone. This is available through social media. You get to see that there are others out there, and we are supporting you, and we're not going anywhere. So this is about change. And, you know, it starts at the top, and they're just gonna have to deal with it.
Lasting change, right?
Yes.
That's the difference. In the past, there was things would happen and there would be a scandal here and there, but then everything went back to normal. And women did not have the power, and now I think this power shift has really happened. Reese, what should you do if you are getting harassed in the workplace? Give us a couple of really specific tips, and then where do we go from here?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I have in the book is a chapter called Covering Your Assets. And that's in chapter number 7. And so what I have to inform people is that the important thing to know about harassment is that it's typically done in a situation where it's private. So the likelihood of there being witnesses is very low. So you're going to need to document as much as possible so that when you do go forward, if you need to go forward, that you have all of the evidence that you may need to show your case is valid and that it did happen. Oftentimes when it happens, you're so stunned that you're not, sitting there with a tape recorder trying to catch it. That's not the norm. Most people are caught off guard. If you're touched from behind, or if he says something, you're not sitting there waiting. You're doing your job trying to be productive. So it's very difficult at times, unless it's repetitive sexual harassment, to catch it. But the one thing that you can do is take use of your phone, of course. If he says it and he's, mid-conversation, you can hit your record button and capture it. If you don't have access to your cell phone, you have to take very, very, very detailed notes. And maybe you can't do it right there, but as soon as you leave, you have to do a full debrief. Who was in the room? Was there anyone else in the room? What was he wearing? What were you wearing? What exactly did he say? Write it down word for word. What exactly did you say? Did he do anything? You literally need to take notes. How did you feel? Go into detail about how it made you feel. What was in the room? Was there anything specific going on in the room? What was on the television? Do you remember what was on? Was it a specific story on the news or a specific show? The details that you need to capture will help to prove that your story indeed happened, because a lot of times it's going to come down to a he says, she says, and unfortunately in these situations, predators or people who take advantage of their power have a lot of power. And so they're aware of the fact that if they say it didn't happen, then their word will usually outweigh yours. So you have to take as much information and have as many notes about the experience. Attempt to find someone who will, co-staff the meeting with you. If it's a private meeting, say, hey, I want to grab Sarah because she's working on this with me, or someone, so that we can, work on this together and get it done quicker. So you need to capture as much information as you possibly can, and as well, keep a diary going forward, because a lot of times you have an experience or respond to sexual harassment. It doesn't just happen and, okay, now I'm done, I go home. It can begin to eat at you. It can begin to cause you to have an emotional reaction. You cannot have as much comfortable sleep. Your attitude towards your spouse or your children can change. All of those things are necessary and important if you ever need to talk to an attorney. So begin preparing yourself, because this is what we call, going forward and having all the information that you need to stand in your truth. It's not about, unfortunately, it's not always about what happened, it's about what you can prove. And in order to stand in your truth, you're gonna need to bring your support with you. And so it's your job, no one else's, not HR's, it's your job, if you're being harassed, to show exactly what happened.
So Reese, in the workplace, is there a way when you start a new job to kind of send a message, or if you see that the workplace hasn't had good training or whatever, is there a way to start out by saying, I have studied this issue, and I'm happy to share with the rest of our colleagues here how we can all address this, like as a group in a non-threatening way. Is that one way to maybe start the conversation? Because maybe we can be more proactive instead of waiting for something bad